The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Witting.
Books, movies, and TV have popularized the near-death experience to the extent that many people are ready to talk about their NDE just as soon as they've recovered from their accident or illness. But one place where patients don't dare discuss their NDEs is in the military. There, soldier and sailor experiencers can be sent to a psychiatrist, lose their benefits or security clearances, and even find themselves discharged for reporting visions of meeting deceased relatives or encountering the light and love of God during an NDE. Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Witting. Our guest today is Diane Corcoran, RN, PhD, and the president of IANDS. Diane didn't know what to make of a Vietnam soldier's story back in 1969. Turns out he was trying to tell her about his near-death experience on the battlefield. The term NDE was unknown then, but military nurse Diane could see that what he had gone through was life-changing. And since that day, more than 40 years ago, Diane has made it her mission to learn more about those who report near-death experiences, especially war veterans. As a result of that Vietnam encounter, Diane has been involved in teaching healthcare professionals about NDEs for over 40 years. Dr. Corcoran is a retired colonel in the Army Nurse Corps and has been deeply involved in helping veterans deal with emotional reactions to their NDEs. Her first appearance on NDE Radio is archived back in January of 2014. Diane, welcome back to NDE Radio.
Thanks, Lee. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here, too. Diane, since your last visit to this show, you were featured in a present production titled Diane Corcoran, NDEs and the Military, which can be seen on YouTube. And there you mentioned your dad as having an NDE, and I wonder if you could tell us about that.
Yes, he, when I was in graduate school and home on leave for a couple of days, he had a heart attack and was taken to the ER and resuscitated. And he briefly described to me what I knew to be kind of a typical NDE. He was not a man who believed in any of these things. And so he did describe it, but he said, I don't want to talk about it. And so unfortunately, we never got to really talk about that again. So, he just didn't want to let go of all those things, and I respected his wishes.
Oh, of course. But it must have given you a secret joy to see that his opinion about NDEs had been changed so radically. Yes,
I did. Although just recently I was talking about NDEs at a dinner table with some new friends, and they basically said, oh, gee, they'd lost a loved one fairly recently, and said, I just don't believe in any of those things. And then she goes on to tell me that she had seen her husband return, and, she was very aware that he was here. And I said, well, that's not an NDE, but it's an associated type of thing. She says, I know it. I believe he was here, but I don't believe in any of those things. So I thought, okay, whatever.
The heart and the mind at war.
Yeah.
You also mentioned on that same show that you think you might have had an NDE yourself at age 4.
Yes, I now, after, talking to a lot of people and really looking at some long-term after effects, I believe I probably did have one. I don't remember anything about it, but that, of course, is something that happens to a lot of people and children. I basically started to bleed significantly after I had my tonsils out. So I was home already. I had come home in the morning, but then was coughing up copious amounts of blood and taken back to the hospital to have a transfusion. So I do believe I had one, and that probably led me on this path, but certainly I wasn't aware of it at the time. And it has given me the sensitivity to follow that curiosity that I had with the young soldier. And as you said, here I am, 40-some years later, still with the curiosity, still supporting people and trying to educate medical folks.
Oh. Okay, let's jump into the military for a moment and give the audience some background on how the military treats the reports of NDEs. And has that changed very much since 1969?
Well, I think there are some folks in the military who are certainly aware of NDEs. I've done some talks to the chaplains and nurses down at Brooke Army Medical Center, to different medical groups. But how they are actually treated, they usually end up, if they have PTSD and physical things, they end up with a psychiatrist or in a PTSD clinic. And that's where they would typically try to tell somebody. And I'm not so sure. I know of a couple of psychiatrists. Certainly we have them at IANDS, but in the VA that are very aware of it. But I don't think they end up treating them really significantly differently or openly about near-death experience. And what I've seen is the few that I've seen lately, because they simply don't talk about it, and I'm trying to open up a dialogue so we could, is a couple that were over-medicated and really misdiagnosed, because, for them to tell people that they died and went to heaven and woke up and saw God or, whatever they did see, unless you're really familiar with that. And unfortunately, a lot of mental health people are not, which is, really surprising at this day and age.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find I serve or occasionally, I should say, at the psychiatric hospital that is attached to our general hospital here in Maine, and I find that the people working there in psychiatry aren't particularly sympathetic to the notion of NDEs. But in the military, it seems like it must be even worse. What's the reaction of your military chaplains to
Actually,
the idea?
I've had more success with the chaplains than with the physicians, at least in my previous experience. I have had military chaplains support a workshop or a lecture on NDEs. So I think they're certainly more open to it. How much they know about it, we just don't know. We have no idea how many veterans have NDEs, because there's never been any statistics gathered, which would be a wonderful situation to understand if we could gather some and be able to show the military, because my own feeling is, with the kinds of injuries they've had, that there are a high percentage of veterans who have had traumatic amputees and really severe problems, and then they go on to have severe PTSD. So an NDE on top of that would just about probably create another whole situation for them, because they don't know how to deal with what they have. And to have a near-death experience, which I believe could probably be very healing in many ways, is just another difficulty without someone to really support them and educate them on it.
Mm. The musician Yo-Yo Ma noted recently that you can turn fear into joy when you receive something within that becomes your own. And it sounds like the NDEs that soldiers are experiencing they're not being given that chance to change fear into joy.
Yes, just to own it. At last year's IANDS conference, I brought a soldier, a retired helicopter pilot, who I met at my Vietnam conference. We have one reunion every year. And he was a patient and had a significant injury. And we're just chatting. And he starts to tell me about this significant experience he had, which clearly was an NDE. And he tried to tell the doctors when he had a huge head injury. He was taken back to Walter Reed and tried to discuss it at the time, and they didn't want to hear anything about it. So here we were 40 years later, and for the first time he had an opportunity to talk about his experience and own that experience. He is a retired chaplain now. When he got out of the military, he became a chaplain, but, was never able to really own it or talk about it.
Wow. It's reminiscent of pilots who try to report seeing a UFO. They quickly learn it will only get them in trouble to even talk about it, and so they don't. But anyway, so military chaplains aren't getting any special training in how to deal with NDEs.
No. I think it really. I did a talk down in San Antonio at Methodist Hospital, and a military psychologist came to the talk. And when I it's a basic, here's what it is, here are the after effects, here are the things you can do. And she said to me, I am just irate that I have never been given the education or this knowledge in my education. Why are we not hearing about it in school, in, continuing ed programs? And she's absolutely right. How are they supposed to handle things if they have no idea about what's going on with some of these veterans?
Right, exactly. Well, I guess this is where IANDS can jump in if we only had the resources.
We're really hoping, and for the last couple of years, we've offered scholarships to vets. We want them to come to the conference. We want to give them whatever information we can. We've had a special email line, vethelp@.com, and be able to talk to somebody about it. We want to help veterans at least be able to identify and give them information and do whatever we can to provide them some support.
Did we get any kind of a turnout from the vets at our San Antonio conference?
We had some, and certainly more than we've had in the past. And so I think it's all part of the difficulty, the reluctance to talk about it. We've had some success with Vietnam vets, but we're still not seeing too many Iraqi and Afghanistan vets. We did see a couple, but I know there's thousands and thousands of them out there, and I hope one day, I think the problem is it's hard for us to get the word out, to be able to let them know in any formal way, because it's not going to happen through the formal eyes of the VA. And so what we have to do is find some other way to give them information.
Well, with the development of all the new techniques in resuscitation, how many lives we're saving now on the battlefield, there's got to be a lot of stories out there.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I saw just last month you had a discussion with vets discussing their NDEs, and it was posted on YouTube in February. And then a talk you gave about the military during the 2010 IANDS conference.
I've been talking about it a long time.
Yeah. Well, that 2010 video got more than 25,000 views.
Oh, really?
I suspect there are military out there who are, at least through YouTube, getting some information on the subject.
Well, we hope that they are, and, that they'd be able to come to us, because I don't think they're going to get it through their care at the VA. We've really put together a educational package for the VA and military hospitals, to be able to help the providers identify an NDE. And when I was on active duty, I spoke at lots of different military conferences, and, people would call me. And so it was more out there back when than it seems to be now. And I hope that we will just keep plugging down this road to try to give military folks any information and support we can. We're developing a veteran video that we're trying to, we've got a start on it in a trailer, and then trying to raise the money to continue the development, which we would give to the VA and military and veterans to be able to give them some accurate information.
I was going to ask you about that. Is the trailer on our website?
I think the trailer has been sent to all the board members. I'm not sure if it's on the website right now, because it was the first edition of it, and so we had some things we wanted corrected, but I'm sure it will be soon.
And if somebody wanted to make a contribution to the making of that video, how would they go about doing that?
Just write or email IANDS, IANDS.org, and you can send a donation. Just mark it Veterans Video would be the way to start that.
Well, maybe we could jump now into our upcoming conference in Orlando, if you could tell us what's going to be happening there.
Yes, we have a great conference this summer. It'll be in July, the end of July, in Orlando, and we will have Anita Morjani, Maggie Callanan, and Suzanne Geisman, and really some wonderful keynotes. We have also Lauren Bellish is going to be a keynote. She has just written a book about NDEs in the ICU. So it's going to have some new people that have never been there, and a full array of other speakers on lots of different topics. And, of course, it's in a great place where people can bring their families and visit Disneyland after the conference.
Yes.
So we're thinking it'll be a great time. As you know, every time we have a conference, about a third of the people are brand new to IANDS. And then there are people who have been experiencers and for the first time are coming to a conference, and for them it's life-changing. I can't tell you the number of letters or emails I get about, thank you so much for having these, and I just had no idea of the information or help, or, there's so many different topics and so many different experiencers there that people get the opportunity to talk to.
I know, the first conference I went to, I was overwhelmed. I think I've mentioned this on the show before, but there was someone fell down some stairs. You probably remember that, and so the experiencers were meeting, and we all joined hands and to say a prayer for her recovery, and the power of that circle of people, experiencers holding hands, was amazing. It was so electric. I was very moved by it. And I think other people have had that same experience with just by being in a room with 200 experiencers is pretty powerful.
It's pretty powerful. I hear that from people about the electricity of the event, and I know that my friend the veteran who spoke for the first time last year, he was just overwhelmed with all the experiencers and the opportunities. And then we probably have one of the best bookstores ever, where if you want a book on NDEs, that's the place to get it. And so they're walking out with arms full of books and a renewed sense of normalcy, that they're okay, that, for the first time they're with folks that don't question anything, just treat them as any other person who's had an NDE, because there's so many there that have.
I know. Even the little conversations that get going, one-on-one in the hallways between sessions, two people telling one another of each other's experiences.
Yeah.
And I think one year we even had a T-shirt that said, I'll tell you my experience if you tell me yours.
Yeah, they're very, very healing to be able to do that.
There are going to be workshops this year?
Yes, there will be several workshops. Anita's doing a workshop, Suzanne's doing a workshop, Maggie Callinan's doing a workshop, there are several other ones. So we will have different kinds of workshops. There's also someone that's going to do workshops with children, a workshop for children.
Oh, terrific.
And their parents. So we're hoping to be able to identify some parents who would like to get better information on their children who have had NDEs, because, of course, they don't have the access that adults do, and sometimes parents don't quite know what to do about it.
Right. Is PMH Atwater going to be there?
She will. Mm-hmm.
And is she working with the kids?
She's going to help with this, and she also is giving a talk on children and NDEs.
Her research on that has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, there's nobody who's written more books and been more dedicated than PMH on the subject. Of course, she's an experiencer and has used that information to talk to many children and adults about their NDEs.
How about Nancy Bush? Is she going to be there?
I don't know right now, but I hope so. We always like to have Nancy there. Nancy talks about frightening NDEs, which we hear very little about, but certainly there are some folks that have them, and she's the expert on that area.
Yes, I was on a panel with her a couple of years back in discussing distressing NDEs, and she's an amazing resource for that.
Yes, yeah. She has a blog, I think, and works on that for people interested. I'm not sure that I know what it is, but it probably would be easy to find on distressing NDEs.
And are we going to be broadcasting some of the talks this year?
Yes. We'll have live streaming, so those people that can't get to the conference could certainly view it through live streaming, and you would get in touch with IANDS.com and find out all the particulars about live streaming. I imagine it'll be on the registration. We had several people that did that last year, and I hope we'll have more for those people who just can't get there.
How many conferences have you been involved with now, Diane?
Oh, I hate to say, I think this is our 37th.
Wow.
I'm not sure, and to my knowledge, I think I've only missed one. I was overseas, of course, when I was in the Army. I came back for one that was in Georgetown, and but I did miss another one, I believe, someplace back in the 80s.
Where was the first one held?
The first one, in Connecticut, I think, but I'm not sure where the first one. We had someplace in our, it's a good idea. We should list them in a newsletter, just periodically to look at where we've been. We try to go back and forth across the United States, and we hope one day we'll have an international one as well.
Yes. Was Raymond Moody part of the early conferences?
Yes. All the founders were usually part of the early ones. The person who's been probably the most represented is Bruce Grayson, who was the father of the research. Raymond's the father of really using the name near-death experience, although we now know that it doesn't have to be near-death, and it could be an illness or an accident or something like that. And Ken Ring's still involved. He often writes a note if we have something in the newsletter or something he's interested in, he'll write a note and let us know what's going on. Unfortunately, he doesn't travel anymore. But he's still interested and out there paying attention.
Yes. And I've always meant to ask you, did you ever have the chance to meet Elizabeth Kubler-Ross?
I did. She did a joint workshop and lecture years and years ago where I met her. She's an incredible woman, was certainly. I actually, it was interesting because when she came in, I would have not known who this person was. She kind of looked like a bag lady. And, and then she walks up to the stage and has this incredible presence and lets us know, all, and starts talking about these things. It was absolutely wonderful.
I've heard that she wanted to include a chapter on near-death experience in her book On Death and Dying, and the publisher didn't want to publish it.
Oh, really? That might be true. That might be true. I don't know.
He thought it was too far out for her book, and of course her book is still used as a textbook in chaplaincy studies and that sort of thing. Oh,
I'm sure. And way back then, I think about when I got home from Vietnam and still had that young man's experience ever forward in my mind. I mean, people thought I was nuts. There wasn't any books written. Even Raymond's hadn't been written yet. And, I'm starting to talk about this thing that I think is really important. And trust me, being in the military and starting to talk about this, I'm lucky probably that they kept me. Didn't think I was really crazy.
Well, I'm glad that you keep talking about that first encounter that you had, because I'm keeping my fingers crossed that one day that soldier will turn up on your doorstep and say,
that would be wonderful. It really would be.
Because he changed your life.
Thought of why, I wish I had kept some of the contact information on patients. I just didn't think about it at the time. And there's several I've often wondered about, but you never know. It's certainly a possibility.
Well, you get so busy when you're doing that kind of work. As a chaplain, I can see 20 or 30 people a day, and so to try and keep track of all of them would just be impossible.
Yeah, and actually at the time, we just didn't even think that was a possibility, and they would go through the hospital so quickly because the idea is to get them patched up and get them out to the United States for further care.
Yes. Now today I can go, whenever I hear of a code blue, go in and ask them if they happen to see anything on the other side. People do respond. It's pretty amazing. Well, Diane, thank you so much. We're just about out of time for today, but my thanks to Diane Corcoran for sharing the story of her work at IANDS and with military experiencers, and it's ongoing for her and for IANDS as well. If anyone out there would like to listen to the show again or any other of our previous programs, including our interview with Diane back in January of 2014, Please visit our website at nderadio.org. This is Lee Witting saying thanks for listening.